Hey, in the second part of our video lecture about wooden types, we will talk about different wood materials, the basis of which is wood. Let's start with plywood. And let's answer to one question. Is wood itself and plywood the same product? No, they are not. One is natural product and one is manufactured product. That is made from very thin slices of natural product. Actually, content is the same, but structure and behavior of it is completely different. What it does, it creates very strong, very stable board. That's why plywood is one of the most popular building materials we can find. It is a wood product and it consists of whole thin sheets of wood glued together in perpendicular directions. This crisscrossing is what gives plywood its strength and stability. Plywood differs not only in thickness, but also in wood content and quality of individual layers. Basically, the outer covering is usually made without branches so that the plywood can be used in various projects. What is the outer layer and the thickness of plywood determines its price. Plywood that is sanded on both sides is also the best. When buying one, you should look for plywood with the least amount of voids along the edges. For woodworking project, Baltic birch is commonly used plywood around the world. So we live in the right place for using this type of material. Full-size sheets are 1.5 meters to 3 meters or bigger. If there is a small shop in your area or this plywood is imported, it can be sold in cut sheets. You can also buy plywood made from pine. It is quite cheap because it's construction plywood. There are also plywoods that has veneer from expensive tree types like maple, oak, cherry or other hardwoods. These can be pretty expensive. You have to figure out what type of plywood you will need in your project. There is nothing wrong with saving money by buying a lesser grade of plywood. Mostly it is an aesthetical difference. When we go to the lumberyard and get some consultant, if you are not professional, it is quite hard to understand the difference between different types of plywood. There is different grades, B, C, D. There are different grades on different sides, and then there is water resistance or not water resistance, and glues and layers and veneers. Let us make it real simple. Basically, there is marine plywood, one that you can use for boats and projects in humid areas or where the variation in temperature could be extreme. Pine plywood, it is softer and cheaper, and birch plywood, commonly used in our region. If you want to know more about the grades of plywood, I will try to explain it in simple terms. Those letters that describe the quality of plywood mostly start with B. B for the best. That's the easiest way to remember it. When you get B on one side and B on the other side, it's very good material. Then you can get BC, B on one side and C on another side. So from other side there could be a little defects. It means that one face is better than another. B face is called the show face. That is like the one that people see. If your show face is B and the back is never going to be visible and you don't really care what it looks like, it may be as well C grade. So you just have to pick the best material for your project. After all said, let's summarize this information in few sentences. You get what you pay for. If you pay more, you get better stuff. By buying the right plywood for the right application, you will save money because you won't have to do things twice. Keep in mind many advantages that plywood has instead of solid lumber. The price of plywood, taking into account the fact that much less work needs to be invested in the processing than when processing wooden boards is very good. Plywood is very strong and stable. You don't have to worry about expansions and contractions. It won't warp, and it's great material for building big surfaces like tabletop or cabinet facade. It is equally strong in either directions, so you don't need to worry about grain direction, just choose what looks best. Of course, we have to mention some disadvantages when using plywood. Full-size sheets are 125 to 250 or even 150 to 3 meters. It is difficult to move it around. Second, while the plywood looks nice and smooth, the edges can be a little tricky. You can cover them with edge banding or make your own edge banding cut out of solid wood, but it takes time and it will be visible. You can leave them as it is if your design allows it. Then the thin wood veneer on plywood can be hard to cut. Cutting against the grain can cause it to chip out. A good trick is to put some masking tape along your cutting and using the sharp blade. The top layer of veneer is very thin, so it is very easy to accidentally sand off too much of that veneer. And now let's talk about MDF, or medium density fiberboard. Not everybody likes it, but it is inexpensive and it can be useful on some projects. MDF is usually used in projects where it is intended to be painted. For example, furniture facades. In cases where the furniture frame is made using laminate, painted MDF sheets is used for facades. It can be painted in a wide range of colors and competes well with other materials in terms of price. Sometimes it can be covered with laminate or a veneer. The material is very easy to machine and work with. It cuts like paper. Basically, it is the same material because it is made from fine wooden dust. It is a great option for painted details and you don't have to worry about it splintering the way plywood can. Of course, it has disadvantages. Let's name the most important of them. It is fragile, especially near the edges. It can be damaged like cardboard if you are not careful enough. The faces are very strong and durable if you locate it in a dry climate. On the other hand, if the part is exposed to mechanical scratches in which moisture enters, the material immediately absorbs it and swells. Such parts will be easier to replace than to restore. Although the material is good for the making facades and doors, it is not recommended to use for installing horizontal shelves, because over the time the horizontal panel will sag, and it's also quite heavy. You need 2 persons to move around 2 full-size sheets of MDF. But the biggest drawback to MDF is the fine dust it creates when sewing it. You have to wear a respirator while working with it. And now let's talk about OSB, Oriented Strand Board. OSB is a very interesting material, the application of which we will now talk about. It doesn't look very good because it consists of coarse wood shavings pressed together using special adhesives. Basically, it is used to cover roofs, floors and wall frames. In the past, plywood was used for this purpose, but OSB took its place in the market due to its price. You don't need to have good wood for its production. Scraps, non-standard pieces of wood, anything that can be chopped to the suitable size for gluing will do. OSB panels are produced in such a way that it is durable enough to walk on, as well as flexible enough to be nailed to the frame, so that nail or screw head will not stay above the surface. The big disadvantage of OSB is its fear of moisture. We know that all wood materials swell in moisture, but in OSB it happens unevenly. Its edges and cut areas swells. This is the reason why the top layer must be very well applied, no matter is it a roof or floor covering. So the conclusion about OSB is we don't want to use it in furniture production. It doesn't look aesthetically pleasing and doesn't have the right properties to hold a screw from the end. However, the product itself has proven, due to its price and properties, it will be used for finishing building structure for a long time. I hope you found interesting things in this short video lecture about wooden types, when we mean different wooden materials by it. Although the best way to experience something new is to create something with your own hands. So be creative, be sustainable, have fun. See you later.